everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Friday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. JJ Redick explains that we should take him seriously, but not literally. We'll explain next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. No matter how or where you get your podcasts, this one's always going to be free. It is never going to be locked behind some massive, grotesque paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where over 25,000 subscribers, Andy, are all hanging out and are excited to find out whether or not the Lakers can run this early season success to 2-0 and stay undefeated on the year as they face the Phoenix Suns tonight, second game of the season, obviously, for the Lakers. And one that, Andy, if they can manage to win, not only does it, I mean, the 2-0 thing's nice, but more importantly, we've talked a lot about this early season schedule and how brutal it is. And there's no question, it is a brutal early season schedule. You start off 2-0. You're banking, you're going to have off nights. You're going to have a night where a guy can't play. Somebody turns an ankle. Like these wins in October into early November are critically important for how you can manage your season going forward. And just like the, catching the Timberwolves at a time where it was a little advantageous for the Lakers, you can make the same argument for Phoenix that they are, kind of getting their stuff assembled as well and may not be the best version of themselves yet.
Getting themselves assembled, and also, fingers crossed, they are tired because their game Wednesday night against the Clippers went to overtime. So at the very least, even with a day in between, they already had a rest disadvantage compared to the Lakers, and they had to play overtime. And frankly, they really had to fight to secure that win. We're going to talk about Phoenix over the course of this show. Just spoiler alert, I remain unimpressed by them.
Well, we'll get to, maybe we'll just start with the game, but like, it's not only, but yes, people are saying Andy, there's a day off in between, but it's a day off in LA. And as we all know, NBA players and an extra night in LA, a Thursday night, by the way, which might as well be the weekend.
I mean, hell, they may have spent after Wednesday night until 4 a.m. at the Intuit bar. That club
right.
Afterwards, because it was the brand new night of the arena opening. Kevin Durant experienced the wall. You hang out at the club until 4 a.m.
It's like you're still walking around at 2 or 3 a.m. wondering why, as a group, you agreed to that guided tour from Steve Ballmer. Here are more toilets. Toilets.
It is, by the way, for folks unaware, I don't know what the name of it is, but like the club bar inside Intuit is the one place in this entire city, maybe in the entire state of California, where you can drink and serve alcohol until 4 a.m. May or may not have anything to do with a reported big contribution from Steve Ballmer to Gavin Newsom's campaign a couple of years. I am
don't know
not
if
actively
so,
or responsibly connecting dots.
Money well spent, but either way, we'll see about the Suns. And it's just it is so important for the Lakers to get off to a good start. JJ Redick has emphasized that. Talked about you look at last year 17 and 19. You look at the year before 2 and 10. 2 and 10 especially is just it's almost impossible to put yourself in a good position. Maybe as the Lakers had, you can climb back to a place where you are in the postseason tournament in one way or another. And in the case of a couple of years ago, the Lakers, managed not only to get into the thing, but made it all the way to the conference finals. But you are doing it in a way that makes it really hard and diminishes the ability for you to play at your best at the end of the season. And so, I agree with you. I think I probably like the potential of the Suns a little more than you do. Yeah. I'm not one of these people who picks them to go to the finals, but they are clearly, with Mike Budenholzer still in that process, at least if Wednesday's game is any indication, they're still in that process of kind of figuring out who and what they are and adding, I was reading some stuff around Suns blogs and stuff today that, it's the offense looks the same. It's too reliant on Kevin Durant. It's too much ISO and it's with this and that, whatever. Saw the game on Wednesday. They are still, Yusuf Nurkic aside, prone to being kind of pushed around. And so like some of these problems that they had last year persist into this year, and playing again on their home floor, it's a great opportunity for the Lakers to go out and beat a second, high-end playoff team in the West.
They definitely have the size issue that you were just talking about. I also think that as much as adding Tyus Jones addresses the need that they had for a point guard on the roster, and between Tyus Jones and Monte Morris, like they have if nothing else, they have added two guys who are considered very, very high-end backup point guards, right, if not ideal starters. Like both those guys can play, but to me, it doesn't address some of the issues that were still there, and I think actually get exacerbated by putting Jones in the starting lineup, which I am willing to bet was promised to him when he signed that veterans minimum deal. Unless you're going to move one of the big three, and the obvious one would be Bradley Beal, to the bench. And
I thought you meant in trade. I was going to laugh at you.
Well,
good luck with that.
He is the obvious guy to move. There's just no way in hell it's actually going to happen. but he is the obvious one. But it
is a good idea.
Unless you're going to move him to the bench, you remain, you not just remain small with Tyus Jones at the point, and Nurkic the only big man, only real size in the starting five. You also defensively have a lot of problems that are directly exacerbated by now not starting either Grayson Allen or Royce O'Neal. Right. Like, I think in a lot of ways, Tyus Jones addressed an issue for them, but I wonder if he actually made them more vulnerable in the process. We'll
creates
see.
Different ones. And we'll see, we spent a ton of time on it, but like every team, what they're doing now may not be what they're doing in December, may not be what they're doing in March. Do want to let people know quickly that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. One thing I'm really interested in, Andy, is Anthony Davis, just because, obviously he gets, I think, a special kind of amped for the matchups against a guy like Rudy Gobert or Giannis or Embiid, some of these players who are seen to be DPOY candidates, somebody who sort of takes some of his shine there. And I think he likes the opportunity to show what he can do versus the players like Yusuf Nurkic, however, have been the types of guys that historically AD has struggled against. He's had less success against the itches of the itches and Sabonis types and stuff in the league. And so to come out and you have that high profile game against Rudy Gobert, but to turn around and come back and have another one of these sort of dominant performances against somebody like Yusuf Nurkic, I think would be another really good sign that this early season run from Anthony Davis can be pretty sustainable.
Well, he gets more opportunities on top of it to prove it, because they have a back-to-back against Sacramento. So there's the bonus. And then their next game after that is again Phoenix. Like they see Phoenix a lot early in the season. I think they actually see Sacramento a lot pretty early too.
Yeah, the schedule's very to try to keep too many back-to-backs from piling up. The NBA has created a lot of weird scheduling things where you see certain teams a ton early, they're home and home back-to-backs and stuff with no travel. There's all kinds of stuff going on, but yeah, that's part of the deal.
You also mentioned too the early schedule, like the opening 10 games for the Lakers is tough, but the opening 40 games for the Lakers is much, on balance, it's all relative because the West is just brutally hard. But it is on balance, pre-All-Star break, easier than post-All-Star break. Like their schedule post-All-Star break is brutal. it's really important that they bank these early wins, regardless of strength of schedule, the opponents or whatever, just because it is only going to get harder the deeper in the thick of it they get.
So that is plenty to watch for. Obviously, we'll bring you something after the game to sum it all up. JJ Redick spoke to the media at practice on Thursday and gave us a little bit of a guide, Andy, as to how to interpret the things he says, and we'll explain what it is next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active users. Prize Picks, the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick 2 to 6 player stat projections, more or less, choose between more or less, and then watch the winnings roll in. If you pick correctly, you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. For example, this week, you could go Justin Jefferson more or less than 83.5 receiving yards, or Patrick Mahomes more or less than 267.5 passing yards. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNBA on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to get the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game.
Quick reminder, too, folks, we now have a newsletter. This Locked On Lakers show that we've got really across the entire network, but it's team coverage sent into your inbox every day. You can go to lockedondaily.com. Again, lockedondaily.com to sign up for the Locked On Lakers newsletter. Keep up with the podcast and all that stuff every day. Well, a lot of interesting content there. So one of the things, Andy, that comes with a new coach is learning their personalities, learning kind of about them, what makes them tick. And in the case of JJ Redick, perhaps his sense of humor. The media was informed on Thursday that perhaps we do not need to take him quite as literally on everything, starting from the 53 pointers to the hard new basketballs. We don't have to be quite as literal thinkers when we cover JJ Redick over what he said, Andy, he hopes is a long relationship.
And he was saying because of this long relationship, hopefully you guys will start figuring out when I'm being 100% serious versus half kidding, half serious versus guys, stop. I'm clearly not being serious. Mm-hmm. This was in regards to Redick saying after Tuesday's win versus the Wolves that he was mad about them playing with brand new basketballs, and he was going to call the league about this. He said, I'm not joking. I'm neurotic. I think he is, and we talked about this after the show. I mean, after the game, I do think he is genuinely neurotic about this sort of stuff. Like JJ Redick seems like he is pretty anal about the things that he cares about, which is clearly a lot of things. That being said, though, the idea that JJ Redick, after his first official day on the job, was going to call up Adam Silver and get him the what for over the state of the basketballs. He wanted to let people know, like, because he was asked, like, did you call the league? What came of that? And he's like, no, I know how to get different basketballs to the game. I know where we keep them. We'll bring them, the more worn ones, to the arena on Friday. It's going to be okay. But this reminds me of just how we had talked about after the 53 pointers thing, that a lot of fans and media freaked out about, thinking this was JJ Redick literally calling for 53s a game, which that's a lot.
It's like, a lot. That's 8 more than the Celtics, who led the league last year, took.
You and I pretty quickly felt like, I don't think he's being serious. I think he's more just reinforcing the idea that he would like to see the Lakers take more threes.
Yes.
I think the guide for this should be, think about the statement And then think about, okay, JJ Redick, guy who thinks over everything, weighs the pros and cons of everything. Does this seem like the thing a person who weighs the pros and cons of everything would do? Does it seem like the guy who weighs the pros and cons of everything would want a team taking 53s? Probably not.
Yeah. I think the 53-pointers thing was clearly tongue in cheek. Take 10, take 40, take 50. It's like, point being, like you say, I want us to take a lot of 3-pointers, and I don't want us to be thinking about the number. I don't want us to get hung up on, wait, we take 40? Is that too many? 45? Like, I'm going to take good shots and what's there. And like, it was to that end, like they took 19 in the first half against, the other night against the Wolves, and 11 in the second. So like they will cut down on it, and the reason was because they were doing so well getting the ball inside, and that's where.
And Redick said he was happy about that. He was happy with their shot selection.
And so he wants them to be taking the right shots and taking the best shots that are available there in the offense. But what he doesn't want them to be doing is shying away or somehow being reluctant to take 3-pointers because there's a perception that they've taken too many of them, or they're just chucking from downtown or whatever it might be. It's like, no, be aggressive. We can make these shots. They haven't yet, but they will. We can and will make these shots. Take them, because in today's NBA, it's really hard to get by on 33-pointers a game, even if you are shooting at a pretty good percentage, which the Lakers obviously did last year. I do think the basketball thing is possible to me that this is at least a detail. It's certainly a detail that he overlooked, like some way, shape, or form. Getting the right basketballs to the arena was something he didn't check off his little list.
I bet it's a big list. I don't think it's
probably
a little list.
And that's not his job. And I don't know, they have new equipment guys this year. It's the first game, and whatever it might be. And so like, it's not that big a deal, and it may not really be the basketballs might have been a little more worn than we were giving credit for. Maybe Redick was putting something out there, to the effect, kind of deflect from the bad shooting overall. Part and parcel to what he's saying about, taking lead, he actually said, like, some of this is shtick, some of this is like, so
I think some of it is him marketing himself as the detail-oriented sicko.
And so, there are going to be times when, like every coach, he's not totally telling us the truth. And so, did the Lakers really suffer because the basketballs didn't feel right? I mean, Minnesota only shot 32% from 3, and that's not very good either. So maybe, they weren't feeling. So I do think, we all just have to get used to the communication style and trying to figure out, okay, Redick is a smart guy. All coaches are judicious, I think, about what they say to the media, because they understand what's different about saying something internally versus externally. Generally speaking, you say things for a reason, and sort of learning what those reasons are. And who else, by the way, Andy, is paying attention to these things are his players, because his players are going to learn to understand what it means when Redick says X, Y, or Z publicly rather than privately, or what certain messages mean, or when he's saying something, what is he really trying to tell us through the media? It's different with every coach. Phil Jackson, coaches often communicate with their players through us rather than, the media. There's a lot less oftentimes direct one-on-one communication between NBA players and their head coach than you might think as an observer of the league.
The one thing, though, that I did think was in terms of Redick messaging things that he likes, things that he doesn't like, and what he wants from the team, and giving them the space in some ways to figure it out, even with a game plan. Like, you're not going to be robots. Dalton Connect, after Thursday's practice, was asked essentially about what they're doing out there, game planning, stuff like that. And he said that they want to play in a way where they be themselves but don't beat themselves. And I feel like that's a good way, whether intentionally or not, a good way of summarizing the idea of having a game plan and knowing the things you are not supposed to do, the things that will actually F up the game plan, while still having a certain amount of freedom to play to your strengths. But also, basketball is improvisational on some level. Like, you cannot plan everything. So
I want to try to talk to Redick over the course of the season, talk to players just about that concept of called plays versus uncalled plays, and what is happening in unstructured offense. Like, because it's not unprincipled, it just means you didn't call a play. And so, like, those distinctions about what is a play call and what isn't, what are the variances in play calling, when you call a play, what does it really mean to call a play? Because there are option trees in every sport when you call a play of, like, if defense does X, we do Y, all of these other things. And so I think this emphasis that we're seeing now, particularly on the Lakers side, if you follow guys like, our friend Tim _ NBA, Cranjis Basketball, you see him on, the Lakers Exceptionalism pod. People who are really charting these things, who can recognize stuff, better to the eye, at least certainly than I can. What is normal, what isn't, what structure is, and what it is. All these things, it's a really cool new thing that's being emphasized around the league that I'd love to learn a little bit more about. Speaking of what's happening on the court, Andy, the Lakers get a new one for the in-season tournament, or the NBA Cup, or whatever it's called now, and some disturbing news from the Clippers, which show, as you have pointed out a few times, Andy, just how lucky the Lakers were that they missed out on Kawhi Leonard. All that next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, you can enjoy this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Let's just say you are watching a game and it feels like you are anticipating everything before it happens. Every big pass, every big turnover, a sack, busted run, whatever. You can check out the latest stats and view live play-by-play and so much more on the exact same page where you would place your bets and confirm those hunches. Plus, you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. The NBA season is officially underway. Our friends at FanDuel have options for you as of this recording. Thunder 3-1 favorites to win the Western Conference. The Wolves, Mavs, and Nuggets were all tied at 5-1. The Lakers at 19-1 to win the West. The Warriors 21-1, and the Kings, who the Lakers will be seeing on Saturday, 22-1. That's FanDuel.com.
So there's always a lot of controversy, Andy, whenever the NBA reveals, like, the city uniforms or this and that. And generally speaking, Lakers fans are picky about these things. All fans are, but, like, it's particularly when you get to legacy brands like, the Lakers. I know people don't like hearing it, but the Celtics, teams with really classic uniforms, the general inclination is don't mess with them. Throwbacks are nice, like when you go to, like, the powder blue for, like, the Minneapolis days or something like that, and kind of mix up some of those homages. But let's not get too crazy with our uniforms. And so this year's city jerseys from Nike are, I think, we're given mixed reviews, I'll say, by Lakers fans. But this actually, I think, is going to get better reviews. It's the court for the NBA Cup. It's a customized court, and where people might remember last year when a lot of teams, as they were looking at their courts for these games, like, you needed not just sunglasses, Andy, but, like, really, really dark ones for a lot of these. Some of these colors were insanely bright.
Red in particular, like,
yes.
The red if we learned one thing from the IST, it's that there is such a thing as too much red on television. Like,
yeah.
I mean, the reds in particular popped in ways that were frankly disturbing. But this one's
pretty good.
I like it. I mean, it's a lot of yellow and gold. The lanes look like the trophy, but they're very simple. Like, there's not a lot going on. But one of the key things they did add, which is pretty cool, and it's subtle, but you can see it, is the landscape of the city, like downtown LA. the skyline. You can see those buildings. I think it looks cool. It's definitely not busy at all. Like at the very least, it's kind of like the philosophy with a doctor: first, do no harm.
Yeah,
I don't think they harmed a thing with this court.
I agree, and I think it's one of those places where the gold as a primary color for the Lakers comes in handy because you can kind of keep your floor looking like it's made out of wood and use gold pretty prominently. I realized too, the other thing that I kind of like about it, if we're showing people on the YouTube channel, if you're seeing it, is they have the NBA Cup at center court, and it is a reminder, to me at least, of like how cool it is when they do that in the finals. They don't do it every year, but when they put the Larry O'Brien in the middle of the floor for that. So hopefully the Lakers get a second specialty floor later in the season that includes a different trophy. The other thing that I would love to see are like elements like printing the skyline on like the normal floor, like little stuff like that. Like you can do cool stuff now without it being crazy or unnecessarily busy or whatever it might be. Little wrinkles like that I'd love to see the Lakers try to do without messing with certain things like the uniform too much. I don't feel like the court is sacred in the same way that the uniforms kind of are. So that's just my opinion. Kawhi Leonard is going to be out for a little while, Andy. Some reports measured in weeks, and then we'll see when he actually comes back.
Right at a time where people might have some questions for him, and he's going to be even less available than normal.
Yeah, his trainer is suing the Clippers. Ex-trainer is suing the Clippers for, and the Clippers ex-trainer, it should be noted, suing out. I mean, I read the article, same article everybody else read, and it's one of these things that sounds like, I bet if you unpeel this onion back far enough, you can find some stuff that the Clippers did wrong. Like he alleges a lot of tampering on the Clippers part, to which I would say, of course. I mean, the Clippers responded by saying that the NBA investigated and all that stuff or whatever. But the idea that the Clippers didn't tamper with Kawhi, I mean, they were fined for basically following him around the country. Like
I was going to say, I mean, they treated
like that.
They treated Kawhi Leonard like he was a Dead show, and it was like Grateful, it was the Grateful Dead with deadheads following him all over the country. Like this was
back in the parking lot selling veggie burritos. I remember.
Yeah, I mean, this was open. This was an open secret. It has been laughed about for years.
Big, they're just big Raptors fans, Andy. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, this is
who doesn't love Canada and March.
Well, I mean, there is alleging too that I believe that this goes back even to when Kawhi was still with the Spurs and all the stuff that was going on between San Antonio and Kawhi when he was first starting to have these knee issues and the distrust that grew between Kawhi and the Spurs, which eventually led to him getting traded to the Raptors.
Right. And there's allegations in here from the ex-trainer that, the Clippers were forcing Kawhi to play and not following protocols and all this. It's like I said, to me, it's as a person looking from this from the outside, the Clippers call it
forcing him to play, and this is all he's on the court.
Right.
This is it.
The Clippers are calling it a money grab.
Do better, Clippers.
Right.
If that's the case. Work harder.
Imagine how much he would have played if they let him do what he wanted.
I mean,
but it's
can't be strong arming him that much.
I suspect that both sides probably, whether we're talking about actual violations of the NBA law or the, California or federal law, or whatever, I have no idea. But it's probably one of these things where you peel it back. Yeah, the Clippers probably have a point that these might be the allegations of a disgruntled ex-employee trying to get a little cash. And the guy might also have a point that, the Clippers might have been up to some stuff that they maybe shouldn't have been. But what it really says to me, it's less about Kawhi as a human, but it gets a lot to, I think, how fortunate the Lakers are to just not have to be involved in that, because I'm sure they would have brought this trainer in, and who knows, they might have had, the Lakers have had enough trouble with training staffs as it is. So that could have been an issue. And more importantly, they would have put themselves in a position where they would have had to do probably the same thing the Clippers did in terms of giving buckets and buckets of money to a guy that you could pretty well say with fair confidence is going to be hurt all the freaking time.
The one thing the Lakers, I am very sure, would have done that differently than the Clippers, and in this particular case, no matter how you feel about it, better than the Clippers, is there's no way in hell they would fire a superstar's personal trainer. No. Not in a million damn years would they have done that.
No, I guess maybe not without the express written consent of the superstar himself.
Well, express written consent and this having been worked out with said superstar so we don't end up here. Like, I think the Lakers would have done a better job if they fired the trainer, which, again, I think they wouldn't. But if they did, I imagine they would have done a better job tying up loose ends because they are just very practiced, for better and worse, at catering to their superstars. That said, though, with Kawhi, I say this as somebody, and, if you really want to find the receipts from 5 or 6 years ago, you can. You probably have better things to do with your time. I was very openly skeptical that Kawhi was ever considering heavily the Lakers to begin with. My thought was always, I cannot think of a star in the league who projects to enjoy being a Laker and everything that comes with being a Laker and that scrutiny and media attention less than Kawhi. It always felt like a leverage play. That being said, though, the Lakers waited out that leverage play till the very, very end. So I think it's still safe to say you never know what could happen. They dodged a bullet big time here.
Yeah, and I look at it from a forward-looking perspective that, the Clippers, he signed the extension that it kicked in this year or it kicked in last year. I don't remember, but he signed for $50 million a year.
The extension was signed in the middle of the 23-24 season. Remember that 3-week run where the Clippers looked incredible?
Right. I forget the exact time. And point being that they're on the hook for $50 million a year for 2 more seasons after this one. And, I don't doubt the Lakers probably would have done the same thing. The Sixers have done the same with Joel Embiid, who has a sketchy injury history. But it's like it is the dilemma of NBA teams that you kind of have to do this for players that you have, regardless of how old they are, because they're so hard to replace. And teams like the Clippers, they're completely capped out. They generally often don't own their own picks because they've made big trades. And it's very hard to rebuild and tank and do all that stuff with other teams' picks. You kind of need your own, because losing, being terrible does you no good if you don't have your own draft picks. It just puts you in a terrible. So you just kind of keep chasing it because the alternative of trying to rebuild when you don't have a lot of stuff to deal with is really, really hard. And so, to one degree, it obviously puts a premium on the health of Anthony Davis, makes you think about what that last AD contract could look like in a couple of years. But it really does get to, some of the questions about LeBron, and both how weird it is that he managed to stay as, productive and healthy as he was last year. And like, at least the Lakers kind of get to go year by year with this stuff and not lock LeBron into 4 years at 50 or 60 million a year.
Look, I get all of the concerns that the Lakers internally, and certainly Laker fans, have about the availability and, health and all that stuff of LeBron at this stage of his career, and even Anthony Davis. But, and they've had their seasons before of missing games, but they are, compared to Kawhi Leonard. And frankly, I'd say you could, if you put the games played in front, side by side between LeBron, AD, and Paul George, I imagine the ledger comes out ahead on the Lakers side compared to just George.
Embiid, George, a lot of these
George,
guys.
Another guy
You're
too.
talking about guys who are attached to the Lakers, sure.
Yeah, I mean, there was a period where the Lakers were more sure about getting Paul George than they were LeBron.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, it's an interesting thing. It kind of speaks to the dilemma and why the Lakers are so even if it's going to be hard for them to do it, why they are so interested perhaps in pivoting to this player development strategy, because being locked into a situation where you have to continue signing players deep into their 30s is a losing proposition almost all the time. So Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out. With over 25,000 subscribers to the show, remember, go to Lakers or LockedOnDaily.com, I should say, and sign up for the newsletter. We'll see everyone after the game.